hooked on a feeling. I'm high on believing. So in love with me.
Why would the Apache tribe have joined, the environmentalists in Arizona to sue the Vatican to try to stop them in federal court from being on that mountain? Well, I had assumed it's because they were there ahead of everybody else, right? So their forefathers and foremothers lived on the mountain, died on the mountain, so it's kind of like a graveyard, and they didn't want a bunch of heavy equipment in there. Well, I said that on your show.
Right.
Then the show broadcasts, and there's an Apache, a member of the nation out there watching the show, and he emails me and he wants me to know that what I had said was okay, it's true enough, but he said, that's not the point, you've missed the big picture. And I said, what's the big picture? And he said, well, Mount Graham is one of the 4 holiest mountains in all of the world for all indigenous people, and that's why we didn't want them up there, because it is what you or I would call a stargate, a doorway, a portal, a strategic geographic location through which entities have entered into and exited our 3-dimensional reality since the dawn of time. Well, when you told me that, Sid, the conspiracy meter in my head went into the Richter scale now about why the Vatican would have been willing to fight in federal court to be on that mountain. Why not just go to another mountain, right?
A portal, that's just a word that means a doorway, an entrance or a gate, and in a really simple sense. But what we're talking about is a gateway between realms. And like in the Bible, we see Paul talk about the first heaven, the second heaven, the third heaven, things like that. So we get the idea that there are like parallel realms, the heavenly realm and the earthly realm.
Right.
And so there's these other dimensions, perhaps is a way to say it.
But we worked it out. Long story short, I wound up going to the 4 corners of the United States of America. We sat down in a traditional hogan. He's got the fire going. He's drawing in the dirt like the oral historian that he is. But I went there to ask him this question. What happened to the Anasazi, the pre-Pueblo Indians that built all the fantastic cliff dwellings in the 4 corner area, who literally seemed to disappear overnight? So he starts telling, the sanitized story. Well, they probably migrated, blah, blah, blah. And I raised some objections to that, and he looks right into the camera. We filmed him for 3 hours. He looks right in the camera, and he says, well, I shouldn't tell you this, but if you would have asked my great-grandfather, here's the story that he would have told. And he starts telling about a portal opening in very early America, and a fallen reptilian being. They actually draw pictures of this thing. It looks like a half-man, half-reptile. He comes through the portal. He starts teaching the Anasazi how to go into their kivas and to practice sorcery, pharmakia, how to open gateways and doorways to the underworld. Well, all of a sudden, the doorways start opening and giants emerge onto the surface of the earth. They draw that too in their petroglyphs that date back to 1,000 years before Jesus walked on the earth, of a doorway, the reptile, giant 6-toed and 6-fingered beings coming through.
The Bible talks about people with 6 fingers.
That's right.
Toes. The Bible talks about giants.
CERN is a large particle collider. Basically, it's in southeastern France. It's a 17-mile-long tunnel that's buried beneath the ground, and what they're doing there is they're accelerating protons at nearly the speed of light.
How many countries are involved?
15, 20 countries of the Earth, something like that.
And these are top scientists.
These are top scientists in the world. And actually, these are the most powerful scientific experiments that have ever been conducted on the face of the Earth. They're accelerating these particles at just beneath the speed of light, and they film what's going on. Now, why are they doing all this? Well, particle physicists, of course, want to know about the nature of creation, so they burst these particles into their subatomic pieces to try to understand what they're doing. But they're also looking for gravitons because they believe that those gravitons might be escaping into a parallel reality.
Do they believe that they can actually create a passageway to what they think is heaven, which I know is the demonic realm?
They not only believe it, Sergio Bertolucci, who is the science director at CERN, said it in a public interview. He said, we are going to open a doorway at CERN, and he said we may send something through it or something may come through it back to us. But they totally believe in it.
If this third secret of Fatima were made public,
yes,
could it be the shock that the public, that the church needs?
It could be, and that is one reason why it's not published, and why it's sunk into a limbo, out of which it's not going to come easily. It would be a shock, there's no doubt about that. It would affect people in different ways, though, Art. Some people would, on being told that this was authentically the third secret of Fatima, they would get extremely angry. Without, again, Art, stepping very carefully.
Yes, sir.
The central element in the third secret is awful. In human calculation, yes, this will shock. This will jerk people out. This will fill the confessionals on a Saturday evening. This will fill up the cathedrals and the basilicas and the churches with worshippers kneeling down, striking their breasts. Now, what's the third secret? It's rather a dire document, ma'am. It's not pleasant reading at all. I'm under oath not to reveal the actual details of it because I read it.
You read it?
I read it. I can't break my oath in that matter, but it is not pleasant reading at all.
Does this involve a chastisement?
Yes, several.
With what, how much weight, Father, do you give to the entire Fatima revelations?
I consider it to be the key event in the declining fortune of the Roman Catholic organization and the defining event for the near future of the Church in the next millennium, the third millennium. It's the defining event.
And you obviously cannot speak of that.
Not factually, not word for word. I can't. I took a note. But it ain't pleasant. The less you know about it, the better. Except that there is going to be a reckoning, and that nobody existing on the face of this earth will be exempt from knowing the power from on high. They will interpret it in different ways.
That stands to reason.
According
to their beliefs.
That's right, their culture and their bias. And there will be people who will be faced with the certainty guarantee that there is a greater power above our heads will say...
They will deny it. They will...
They'll reject it.
The scientists, for example, will find a scientific explanation for it.
Well, they will. Remember the famous so-called Aurora Borealis in 1938?
Well, I certainly am aware of Aurora Borealis, but not one specific.
There was a specific one which they explained by saying Aurora Borealis, but it really wasn't that at all. They all agreed it wasn't Aurora Borealis. The only one who put his finger on it was Adolf Hitler.
And he said, and he said what?
Well, he was in Berchtesgaden at the Wolf's Lair. That was his famous place when he for weekends with his cabinet. And Speer, Albert Speer, who was a member of his cabinet, his architect, tells us in his second book that night they all stood on the esplanade of his villa in the Bavarian mountains, looking out to the east and seeing these extraordinary sights of light. And Hitler said, yeah, nun, now we have to shed blood. We didn't shed blood in taking the Tsar, we didn't shed blood in taking Czechoslovakia, but now we're going to shed blood.
So he took that as a sign.
Oh, he took it as it was a sign. The Virgin who told the children in Fatima in 1917 about this sign, she told them it would take place just before the Great World War. She said, it'll be just before they start killing millions.
Can you tell us in a way that we can read between the lines with regard to the third prophecy? Is there a timetable that you are aware of that cannot speak of that we can read between the lines on?
Yes and no. There is a... It is not 200 years away. It is not 50 years away. It is not 20 years away. We can't avert it now. It is coming. When is something else? But it is coming for sure.
Here's a demonstration showing how a lens could be used to cloak an object. So here is the object we want to cloak. You put the sun in front of it, and as we zoom out just a little bit, it disappears. Because we're no longer observing the actual object. If we move it within the focal length, and it comes back into focus. So what they've been doing is simply refocusing the object that you don't want to see away from your eyes. Look at that, it's gone. You can see it on the screen here, but it's out from the focal length. Now if I move the camera back and forth, you can see clearly it's gone. See that? If I could turn it lens, they may be actually moving this lens. Pretty simple. You can see the lens, but you can't see the object. Instead, you see what's behind the object. And that's what's happening in our skies. Hope this helps.
Something big is here. Tic Tac mixers. They change flavor while you eat them. Try cherry cola and peach lemonade flavors. Tic Tac, go little. Something big is here. Something big is here.